You think the problem is happening right in front of you. The cold looks, the sharp words, the moments where you feel smaller than you used to be. But the most damaging things a narcissist does almost never happen in your presence. They happen quietly, behind your back, and that is why they work so well. In this video, you will learn what a narcissist really does when you are not in the room. You will begin to understand why your reputation changes without explanation, why people suddenly treat you differently, and why you feel confused, drained, and unsure of yourself. This understanding does not make you bitter, it makes you free. Behind your back, a narcissist rewrites the story of who you are. They do not attack you directly. Instead, they plant small doubts in other people's minds. A sentence here, a sigh there. I'm worried about them. They've been under a lot of stress lately. I don't think they mean to be difficult, but psychologically, this happens because a narcissist needs control over how reality is perceived. If they can shape the narrative, they never have to take responsibility. Imagine a colleague who once praised your work. Over time, they become distant. Later, you learn the narcissist told them you are unstable, overly emotional, or hard to work with, always framed as concern. That is why you feel unseen and misunderstood. Your reality was edited without your consent. And here you start to notice another detail. A narcissist does not just talk about you, they compare you. Quietly, constantly. Behind your back, they elevate others while subtly lowering you. Not openly, not aggressively, just enough to shift the balance. They're so confident, unlike you. They handle pressure better. This behavior comes from deep insecurity. By lowering your perceived value in comparison to others, the narcissist temporarily feels superior. Picture a family gathering where you sense you're being treated like the weaker one, even though nothing happened. Later you realize stories were told about your failures, your overreactions, your limitations. That is why you start doubting your own worth. The ground beneath your confidence slowly erodes. But this is only part of the picture. Behind your back, a narcissist also tests loyalty. They tell different versions of the same story to different people. Not to be caught, but to see who repeats what. This gives them information. Who is controllable? Who is skeptical? Who can be manipulated next? This behavior is rooted in paranoia and entitlement. They believe everyone is either useful or dangerous. Imagine sharing something vulnerable with them in trust. Weeks later, you notice people reacting to you with strange familiarity, as if they know something private. That is because your vulnerability was used as currency. And that is why you feel exposed without knowing why. The situation becomes more complicated when you realize a narcissist also plays the victim behind your back. When you are not there to defend yourself, they present themselves as misunderstood, mistreated, exhausted by your behavior. Their suffering is always emphasized. Your pain is erased. Psychologically, this allows them to gain sympathy while avoiding accountability. Think of a partner telling friends how hard it is to deal with you, while you're the one constantly apologizing, adjusting, and giving in. This is why people stop asking how you feel. You are quietly removed from the center of the story. And then there is something even more subtle. Behind your back, a narcissist predicts your reactions. They tell others how you will behave before you ever do. They'll probably get emotional. They always overthink. This creates a trap. When you finally speak up, your response looks like confirmation instead of self-defense. This happens because the narcissist studies you closely, not to understand you, but to anticipate and neutralize you. Imagine finally setting a boundary, only to feel everyone already expects you to cause drama. That is why you feel powerless when you try to explain yourself. Your voice arrives after the verdict. At this point, something important becomes clear. A narcissist does not destroy you by force. They do it by shaping the environment around you. By the time you notice, the room already feels colder. The looks are different. The support is thinner. But there is one more behavior you need to see, and it explains why leaving or confronting a narcissist feels so frightening. Behind your back, they prepare replacements, not necessarily romantic ones, emotional ones, allies, listeners, People who will validate their version of reality when you no longer do. This comes from their fear of emptiness. They cannot tolerate losing supply, so they secure it in advance. Picture distancing yourself slightly, only to notice they suddenly have new close friends who seem oddly informed about you. That is why you feel replaceable. Not because you are, but because they planned for your absence before you even considered leaving. And this leads to a realization most people miss. What hurts you is not just what was said. It's the fact that it was said while you trusted them, while you believed the connection was real, while you were being honest. Understanding this is uncomfortable, but it is also the moment your confusion starts to dissolve. Because when you see these patterns clearly, you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" And you begin asking a far more powerful question. Why did I tolerate this for so long? When you are ready, there is still more to uncover. Because once you see what happens behind your back, you can finally understand why direct confrontation rarely works, and what actually does. Once you understand what happens behind your back, another painful truth starts to surface. A narcissist is not afraid of confrontation itself. They are afraid of exposure. And that is why, behind your back, they quietly weaken your credibility before you ever speak. They do this by questioning your motives, not openly, casually. I don't know why they react like that. They always take things personally. Psychologically, this allows them to disarm you in advance. If your intentions are framed as emotional or irrational, your words lose weight before they are even heard. Imagine finally explaining your side of the story, only to see people already nodding, not because they agree with you, but because they believe they already understand you. That is why you feel invisible when you try to clarify the truth. And here another pattern appears. Behind your back, a narcissist collects information about you, not to connect, but to protect themselves. They remember your fears, your past mistakes, your soft spots. Later, these details are released strategically. This behavior comes from the need for leverage. Knowledge becomes insurance. Think of how something you shared in a quiet moment suddenly appears in a group conversation, framed as a joke or a concern. That is why you feel unsafe being open. Your honesty was turned into a liability. But the situation goes even deeper. Behind your back, a narcissist slowly normalizes disrespect. They speak about you with mild sarcasm, subtle annoyance, controlled disappointment. Never extreme, never obvious. Psychologically, this works because people adapt to tone faster than content. Over time, others begin mirroring that same lack of respect toward you without knowing why. Imagine noticing that people interrupt you more, question you more, listen less. That is why you feel smaller in rooms you once felt comfortable in. And then comes one of the most confusing behaviors of all. Behind your back, a narcissist defends you, selectively. Only when it benefits them. Only when it strengthens their image as fair, loyal, or mature. This creates emotional dissonance. You hear? They stood up for you, and you feel grateful, even though you've been hurting for months. Psychologically, this keeps you bonded. The occasional defense resets your hope. This is why you stay longer than you should, because part of you is still waiting for consistency. At some point, you may notice something else. A narcissist rarely lies in a way that can be easily disproven. Instead, they distort, they omit, they rearrange. This is because they don't want conflict, they want plausible deniability. Imagine confronting them with something they said, only to hear, "That's not what I meant," or "You misunderstood." That is why you start questioning your memory. Not because it's weak, but because it's constantly being challenged. And slowly, a dangerous shift happens. Behind your back, the narcissist becomes the interpreter of your identity. They explain you to others. They label your behavior. They define your role. Psychologically, this removes your autonomy. If others rely on their interpretation, your self-definition becomes irrelevant. Think of realizing that people know you, but not in ways that reflect who you truly are. That is why you feel disconnected from your own life. Now comes the insight that changes everything. None of this works unless you doubt yourself. The narcissist relies on your empathy, your self-reflection, your willingness to take responsibility. They count on the fact that you will look inward while they act outward. And this is where your power returns. When you understand these mechanisms, you stop trying to correct every misunderstanding. You stop over-explaining. You stop chasing fairness from someone who benefits from confusion. You begin observing patterns instead of reacting to moments. You notice who listens without bias. You notice who repeats distorted stories. You stop defending yourself in hostile spaces, and you start choosing where your voice belongs. You cannot control what a narcissist says behind your back, but you can control how much access they have to your inner world. You can limit information. You can protect your vulnerability. You can stop feeding the narrative. And most importantly, you stop measuring your worth through distorted reflections. When you see clearly how manipulation works in silence, you no longer need loud validation. You recognize that respect does not need to be negotiated, and you understand something fundamental. You were never weak. You were surrounded by someone who needed you confused to stay powerful. Once you see that, the confusion fades, and with it, their control. You can't change other people, but the moment you stop participating in invisible games, your life begins to reorganize itself, quietly, permanently.